My name is Rande Howell with Trader State of Mind, and what I want to do, it's just a couple moments, a little house cleaning, is that one, we will take questions after the presentation. Often, many of the questions that people have that's in their mind are answered during the process of the performance. And the second thing is, let's really take a look at this. You know, what you've heard today is an enormous amount about developing the knowledge of trading. You develop an enormous capacity to trade, and then all of a sudden what happens is when people move from literally that simulation, that knowledge, and they want to test it from not in the classroom anymore, but in the real live environment of trading, this is where things become, everybody goes, wow, what's happened? And what you discover is this, is that once you have knowledge of trading, trading really becomes a head game. And there's a lot more to trading than meets the eye, and that's what we really want to take a look at. We want to take a look at what is it, you know? Because ultimately, people they get confident. They know their stuff, and they know they should be able to fly. You know, they just don't see that trading could be that big of a deal. They say, you know, I'm smart, I'm hardworking, I know how to take action, I know how to make things happen, I can make this happen. You know, all I have to do is learn how, and then I got it. And of course, what happens is constantly gloss over those disclaimer notices about risk. And it's an interesting thing when they do, because when they do, finally it comes in a moment where they start really testing their knowledge of trading, not in the classroom, not in simulation, but in the real pressure of trading. And what they discover is there is an enormous gap between their performance without risk in simulation trading and all those paper profits, and in real live trading where risk is real. You can really lose capital. And at that particular time they go, what's going on? And the first place to start is, what does it really take for success in trading? And let's take a look at it here. The very first thing is that you're going to have a methodology. You're going to have to find a way of managing risk that allows you to always be on the right side of risk. Okay? That's the first thing. The second thing is you're going to have a platform that actually performs the functions that you need in real time. What's missed most, though, and it's like, you know, I just didn't even think about it, man. I just thought my head was right. You know, hey, I've been successful in other businesses. I've been successful in corporate. There is no reason that I can't apply the same success principles that have been good to me through my life and apply them to trading, and I'm just going to pick up where I left off. And what they realize sooner or later is that psychology is to trading like the driver of a well-honed racing machine. That racing machine comprises methodology and platform, yet it doesn't operate well without a really well-honed driver. And suddenly what we begin to look at in trading psychology is really about your beliefs in action. You are literally constantly projecting your beliefs upon the markets, and you're getting feedback in your trading account or your P&L statement about how effective those beliefs are in the management of uncertainty. That's the powerful thing, and all of a sudden you start going, well, you know, I've spent a good bit of money, I have developed methodology, I have gone from this teacher to that teacher to that teacher, God knows how many indicators I have, God knows how many times I've changed trading systems, and ultimately, though, what you still discover at the center of it is you. And you finally come to this moment where you go, what gives here? And all of a sudden you realize that in psychology, and this is your biology, creating a psychology is based on producing certainty of outcome. And you get into trading and suddenly there is no possibility of controlling certainty of outcome. And yet we are wired to want to do that in our biology and our psychology. We start projecting those beliefs of control and of perfectionism, of being right or not being wrong, onto the markets, and what happens is we get slapped in the face. Or we start building our net worth, and then it blows up. We go, what's going on with the psychology here? I've looked around, I've looked everywhere, and I finally realized that, you know something? It's probably me. The truth is, if you're like everyone else on the face of the earth, you're going to be blind to your psychology being a problem until there's no other place to look. There have been enormous amounts of people who've literally dropped off the financial cliff with good knowledge, but they can't use that knowledge in performance under pressure. And they keep thinking, though, the problem's out there. It's out there. And then they think, you know, there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with me. And all I need to do is fix this problem, and I'm good to go. And what they don't recognize at this particular point in time is their relationship with money on a very primitive level. There's a glitch between knowledge and performance that just simply won't go away. And all of a sudden you start realizing that money, the very money conversation, perception conversation you have, is also driving your performance in trading. This is where it gets really interesting. And the difference is probability and certainty. Everybody wants certainty. We're wired from it from 6 million years ago. We are always trying to produce certainty of survival. That's what creates species success. And yet, all that success, then it becomes psychological, being able to control outcome, being a type A, making things happen, or being right. We apply that to trading. And trading is all about probability. You can do everything right. Every assumption you got is dead on the money, and you can still be wrong. This is when you go, wow, you know something? I have finally experienced enough financial pain that it is waking me up to where I don't like to acknowledge that maybe I need to do some tweaking with the psychology that's driving the machine of trading for me. And so there's a good reason too, because the blindness to the power of emotion is enormous miscalculation. People go over the cliff all the time. It's very common for me to work with people who easily have dropped $50, $100, $200, $1 million, $5 million. And ultimately, what we finally come to understand, no matter what you were taught, no matter what you want to believe, is that there is no freedom from emotion. What there is freedom of emotion. And it's wired in our biology, and it takes over psychology. In neuroscience, what we say is this: all thinking, all perception is emotionally based. The way you think when you're being rational is very different than the way you think when you're in fear or when you're in euphoria. Very, very different thinking. And the truth is, the emotion will hijack the thinking every time. So when you start asking, Randy, I don't understand it, you know, I know how to trade, but I get in this thing and all of a sudden I start doing really stupid things that I know better than when I finally am not trading. I can look and go, what was I thinking? What you did is you didn't have management of the emotions in the environment of trading. Okay? That's the key. Suddenly what happens is, ignoring or not knowing the emotion shows up, and unfortunately it's not the right one. And the kind of thinking, and I promise you, when you're in hesitation about taking a trade, when you're in that hesitation of that anxiety, the truth is it makes a lot of sense. When you're no longer in the trade doing a review and looking at it, it doesn't make sense because you're being logical. But in the heat of that moment, logic was not the emotion running the mind. Anxiety was. Okay? So then you're going, well, these emotions are important, are they? Yeah. And what we really want to look at, we're going to be looking at two patterns in particular here. One is we want to look at the reactive patterns and their impact on trading. So what we're going to do is take a look at the guy on the left. How many people in here have experienced this state of fear, this moment of hesitation, or even better, when you're being whipsawed inside a trade and you're still within the range of that trade, And it finally, after you've been in it for a while, you just beat up, you've been put backwards and forwards, and you finally get in the green, and you go, oh my God, I finally got it, and you get out early. You get out right then, because it's better to grab right then a little bit of profit than to risk losing it all. You get out, and there it is. It goes on to where it's at. That's the fear of avoidance of threat. Okay? The flip side of that is euphoria, or irrational exuberance. Actually, the fear on the left, we would actually call that irrational fear. Okay? In the exuberance, suddenly euphoria takes over as an emotional state, and suddenly you start over-trading. You start revenge trading because you're angry and you want it back. Suddenly all you're seeing this euphoria, and you start believing with all your heart that the good things are going to roll on. All you have to do is go and go and go. And you don't have emotional control of it if you haven't learned to produce that emotional control. So there you go. You're looking at, this is why you keep doing the same stupid things over again. These are reactive patterns that when things trigger in the environment, they're automatically, bam, the pattern's right there. It's in neurocircuitry, and it takes over your thinking faculty. And there you are. You're doing the same stupid things over and over again. Even when you're in a sane moment, you know better. Why is this? Well, this is a very famous curve that has been around since the early 1900s. They started measuring stress as a unit of performance. And what they realized, up to a moment, stress was actually pretty good. It actually enhanced performance. And then after a while, if the stress was prolonged or intense enough, it no longer was what we call eustress. It was no longer where you're alert, you're focused, you're ready, but it became distress. It became where the physical body began to rev up. It's time to get into fight or flight response. And all of a sudden, bam, it's gone. In my own work with my personal people, we actually use biofeedback devices that allow us to be able to spot literally what we call heart rate variability in the moment. And what we can see is literally stress in the moment of where a person's making decisions and trading. Powerful stuff. And suddenly you start realizing that people are constantly firing to fight flight. If you start having your pulse rate up between 75 and 80, you're already compromised in your thinking ability. Fight flight is already beginning to take hold rather than discipline and partiality. And literally what you're looking to do in eustress, your mind is alert, but your body is not revved up. When it moves over to distress, your mind is alert, yes, but your body becomes revved up, and fight flight kicks in, and you're either going to be angry or you're going to be fearful. This is what has to be interrupted. And you experience this as emotional hijackings. And unfortunately, most of us don't recognize it until after the fact. Okay? So what we're really looking at, this fight-flight business, okay? That's what's hijacking your use of knowledge and hijacking the rational mind from being able to hang around with you as you trade. That's the hijacker. And literally it's down at the very core of a little tiny almond-shaped piece of the brain called the amygdala. It's your fear center. It's also your anger center. And what happens, it is scanning the environment for threat. And it already has reactive pattern ready to go, just in case it finds threat. And it just so happens your primitive brain, the emotional brain, views uncertainty. I want you to see that. I want you to hear that. The amygdala views uncertainty as threat, okay? Because it can no longer guarantee short-term survival. That's the key. And all of a sudden, bam, the hijacking occurs, and this is occurring in nanoseconds. And if you don't get a hold of it in microseconds, it's going to take over. The chemistry in the brain takes over the quality of thinking and mind, and suddenly you become this guy over on the right. This is why you have to learn to manage stress, not just body stress, but mental stress. Until that happens, you're constantly going to be triggering to default programming. Remember, what the brain does under pressure, it reverts back to default programming. That's why you're triggering reactively when you're in that pressure in that moment. You are triggering right there to default programming unless you're able to regulate that. And let me tell you how familiar this is. This is something that I found amusing and also shocking. This was in Scientific American Mind this month. They did an experiment where men and women were left in rooms to be alone with their thoughts. Okay? Within 20 minutes, men, 65% of men, chose to shock themselves, willingly chose to shock themselves instead of staying alone with their thoughts. The moment that discomfort showed up, the moment that uncertainty showed up, they would actually choose pain over dealing with mental process, all this internal dialogue going on in mind. And I might add, only 24% of the women chose the same thing. So if you're a testosterone biological system, understand 65% of us are going to choose to shock ourselves rather than to confront the internal dialogue, all that beating yourself up, all that hesitation, all that self-doubt. Okay? You're not going to want it. And unfortunately, when it does, it becomes the master review. Ultimately, what you discover in trading is this, is willpower, positive self-talk, all those visualizations, all those affirmations, all those mental tricks, all those Jedi tricks, you know, they're simply not effective under stress, okay? So the key is, how do you control stress? This is when, in learning how to manage it, not just on a physiological level, but on an emotional and psychological level, this is what the trader moving in evolution from a newbie to a novice to being a mature trader and to being a profitable trader is learning how to do. You're learning how to be in the swim with a lot of uncertainty in managing the mind, because what you finally begin to recognize is this. You cannot control outcome. You cannot make things happen. What you can do, though, is you can control the mind that you're bringing in to the performance of your execution. And if your methodology and your platform are working, that gives you the edge that allows you to become profitable, very profitable. But that's the key, though. You let go of control of outcome, and you embrace control of the mind you're bringing into a moment. That's the ticket, my friends. So let's do this. What happens when you actually can control the effects of stress and you have them managed, okay? Ultimately, the first big thing is the certainty-based mind that has been developed by your biology, by your family, by your culture, is not going to be effective in trading. That mind, that brain has to be rebuilt. The circuitry has to be rebuilt. It has to generate a different mind that is based on probability and becomes comfortable with uncertainty. That's the real trick. And people are constantly saying, well, okay, I can rebuild it, but what happens is, can I do it now? Can you give me the secret formula that allows me to have this wand and, you know, suddenly a weekend later I'm cured and everything's great? No. That's not the way biology works. I come from working with violent prisoners, at-risk youth, and addictions, and the one thing that we knew is that it would take at least 3 months to change the core beliefs that generated the symptoms. Okay? And the same thing holds, is that we know that it's going to take 2 to 3 months for you to be able to find the wired-in belief system that you're projecting onto the markets that's limiting your ability to perform well in the moment. It's going to take that long. That's with you working. There is no magic pill. It's not an event, okay? I have plenty of people who will go to seminars by very famous people, and they can walk on fire, they can do this, and they come back feeling very powerful. They have just, man, high levels of dopamine and testosterone going on, and they feel that they can conquer the world. That lasts as a seminar high for 2 or 3 days. A couple weeks later, they're back in the same soup. The old pattern has just simply reasserted itself. There are no tricks, friends. There's process that changes things long term. That's the first thing, okay? The second thing that you're going to need to do in order to really change is this, is you're going to have to come to a new understanding of emotion, brain, mind, cognition. What you begin to recognize is that emotions are not touchy-feely. Emotions are biological action potentials, and they take over mind. And the only time that you don't have an emotion is when you're dead. That's why you don't have freedom from emotions. What happens, you say, okay, if I'm an emotional being that I would like to think rational, I'm not a rational being that becomes emotional. You're learning to say, how can I design the emotions that create the mind that I'm going to go work with? These solutions are wired into circuitry, and they are activated by pattern recognition. And it's all about threat first, okay? That's the whole key. That's why you keep doing the same things over and over again. They're not going to change just because you want them to change. You know, that's just the way it works. And then what you have to recognize is, again, the quality of thinking comes out of your emotional state. So emotional state management, man, that's the whole key here. That is the key. And then the biggie, you have to really begin to see, okay, the beliefs that are governing my perception, they're not rational in nature, they're emotional in nature. They are wired into me, and the beliefs that we're looking at are the ones that you have about your capacity to manage uncertainty, to manage challenge. That's the ones we're looking at, and that's the ones that, man, they just pop up like crazy while you're trading. You're forced to look at them, not talk the talk, but walk the walk. Once thinking occurs out of emotion, then you take action. That's why you do all that really stupid revenge trading, that over trading, that freezing and not doing any trading. That's how that happens. That's the action that comes out of the emotional thought that happens. And my friends, the one thing that I have come to understand is that the only reliable instrument, tool to assess the quality of the emotional state and the beliefs that you're projecting on the markets, how effective they are, is in fact your trading account. If you quit looking at your trading account, it's, oh my God, I'm losing money. If you looked at the trading account and say, what is it telling me? What it's telling me is either, oh, this particular belief system that I'm projecting is doing well and my trading account is growing. Oh, the particular beliefs that I'm projecting on the markets about my ability to manage uncertainty is draining, bleeding my account. Let me find that belief system before it causes any more damage. That would be a courageous human being that knows how to build a mind. So we're there, and we still, though, okay, now we have to change the way we understand emotion and cognition, but we say, okay, well, the third thing you're going to need is a set of tools. You're going to need to learn emotional regulation, or what Herbert Benson called relaxation response. You're going to need to recognize that you can calm an emotion down. You're also going to need to develop mindfulness so that you start noticing stuff rather than reacting to stuff. Huge, huge, absolutely necessary. That's the real transformational moment. And then what you're going to have to learn is how to disrupt these negative thought avalanches that happen, that where self-doubt or euphoric thinking take over, rational exuberance take over, and you start doing dumb, stupid things. You're going to have to learn how to say, I observe that, I'm going to disrupt it. But that's not enough. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to build new performance beliefs. Not out of, oh, I would like to believe that, I'm going to visualize myself successful. I'm good enough, I'm deserving enough, blah, blah, blah. Those affirmations and those visualizations are useless unless they're wired in and gained from performance. That's something that I teach. So ultimately, the very first thing we have to start by hijacking this hijacking of the trading mind has to be disrupted, and you have to calm down. I teach people how to literally spot the emotion before they erupt. Most people are enormously ignorant of how an emotion arises and how it takes over first in the body, then it takes over mind. You have to learn that. And in learning that, I use emotional regulation, where we recognize that every emotion has both a breath, a breathing, and a tension signature and a heart rate signature that are associated with that emotion. If you disrupt either of those elements, particularly breath and tension, you disrupt the intensity of that emotion. So even though the emotion is present, you're not allowing it to reach a trigger stage that takes over mind. You can do that tomorrow. You can sit and you can simply notice. You sit in front of your computer tomorrow, I promise you, you'll notice how much tension you're carrying in your body, how fixated your eyes are on a screen, and how you're probably not even breathing. You are setting yourself up for an emotional hijacking. And you can alter it. And I've known people by this and only this, they knew how to trade, they had almost everything. They just didn't know how to emotionally regulate themselves. It was at this moment that they gained access to their trading mind. However, most people, that's not enough. Emotional regulation will calm the emotion down, but it's not going to change the belief structure that you're projecting onto the markets. But if without emotional regulation, you're never getting to the door of the mind. You never have an opportunity to look inside the mind. However, if you have the emotional regulation down, what you're then doing is you're saying, okay, I can now produce mindfulness, or what I call observation of the self, and I can begin to ask, well, what's actually going on in here? When I look into the mind, I start observing that my beliefs and my thoughts and I are not the same, and you can begin to come to a very different understanding of your brain and your mind. And what you discover is this: your brain, on a functional level, is really a community of rival programs that has duked it out for control of the identity of who you are, for the organization of self that you are. And it generally has happened early. I call it the formative period of the brain. Some people would call that childhood. I call it formative period. And what you're doing is you finally realize the mind that emerges from this brain is like a committee. And on that committee, there is a war going on, and you have been asleep at the wheel. That's because you've been asleep. You need to develop mindfulness. You wake up and you realize there is this battle going on within you that you haven't been privy to, and you begin to realize there are enormously destructive elements of the self and constructive elements of the self within your mind. If you ignore them, you give the destructive elements, all that problems with your trading account, a big heads up. By changing it, though, what you begin to do is you start saying, okay, the first thing I want to do is I want to look inside the mind, and I want to see, why is this I keep falling for the same darn thing? And you discover that there is an inner critic living within you, a judge living within you, a self-doubter living within you. And if you've ever had self-doubt, trying to pull the trigger, or you've beaten yourself up, you have heard this inner critic criticize you, judge you. And then the one tracing the money, that's the impulsive side. Oh my God, I'm going to get it, I'm going to get it. Well, when I get that, I'm going to be happy, I'm going to be happy, I'm going to be a man, I'm going to show everybody. What you're looking at is your own sense of fear. Because ultimately it all comes down to a sense of inadequacy, a sense of mattering, a sense of worth, and a sense of powerlessness that lie behind poor performances. You're beginning to observe that, and even though you really don't want to look at it, you're looking at it and going, this is just one organization of the self. There is so much more. There is so much more. All of a sudden, with mindfulness and with some other tools, you start saying, you know, in the same way that there is fear, there is anger, there is self-criticism living within the self, there is also discipline. There is also courage. There is also self-soothing, so important. And there is also impartiality. These are programs that are wired into circuitry. You only need to learn how to pull them together. That's what my program does. And ultimately, when you begin to say, okay, I can start building the committee of the mind, how do you do it? Randy, do you do this funky visualization and affirmation stuff that just, I try it all the time, but when I try to get it in, oh, it's NLP stuff too. Oh, how about it's tapping? It doesn't work under pressure. You're right, it doesn't. I have engineered a way of getting at, I actually take experience that has been encoded by the brain into memory. And what we do is we recode, we teach people to recode that memory to get at. And we take a challenging memory of where you've been really challenged. And we recognize that the discipline of a ruler had to be there. The courage of a warrior had to be there. The self-soothing of a caregiver had to be there. And the clear thinking of a sage had to be there in that moment for you to have met that challenge and to work through it. And literally, you learn what the feeling state of that emotion is, and you pull that forward, and that chemistry is what's generating mind. Remember that that thinking is all emotional state dependent. What we're learning how to do is to build the emotions that create a particular kind of mind that can manage probability and can let go of control. And this is what you get. You get a peak performance mind. And suddenly you are able to embrace uncertainty. It's powerful. And you begin to realize that controlling outcome is an enormously expensive illusion to control. No matter how alpha you were before, that bent toward bias to act, chasing trades, is going to get you in a lot of trouble. You learn patience. You learn that the patient trader is the one that walks away with the money. You now have a mind focused on the one thing that you can control, the mind you bring to the performance of execution. If your methodology is on, you're a profitable trader at this moment. This is how it works. This is what you can control. So, my question to you is this, is that for you, what would it be worth to you to be able to trade from a trained, calm, disciplined, impartial mind? What would it be worth to you? What would it be worth in terms of cutting the bleeding? But also, what would it be worth with the money that you have left on the table before? And you recognize that ultimately there comes a moment where you go, okay, Randy, I've got the knowledge. That's not the problem. I keep running around looking for some guru who can give me the secret. And what you're telling me is this, is that I am the secret. Yes, you are the Holy Grail. It's in the rough, though. You're going to have to train yourself through a process that allows you to build a mind that can do this. It can be done. I see it every day. And so the real key is that ultimately what I discover is you really truly have to become the change that you're looking for. Is that you end up learning to control what you can control. And you really know that your ability is that you can learn to control your performance of execution, not the outcome. That isn't going to happen. So what I find is, particularly when you take from newbies to novice to struggling to mature to expert traders, when you look along that line, is that I don't work with newbies. I need the trader to be able to work with a trader trainer and know how to trade on paper successfully. We need to know they have the methodology, and we know that that's the missing ingredient. If they had that, they'd be there. Okay? But if you've been trading for 2 to 5 years and you've worked through this and you know that, my encouragement is, first thing is go to my website, get my free ebook. Okay? There's a compilation of articles I have that is 160 pages long. It's a must-read. It shows you everything. There are other programs there that really can enlighten you. It can show you. There's different products. I have a very content-rich website. It has lots of articles, lots of videos, lots of free stuff. People like to explore. They like to kick a lot of tires. But if you're really serious, you start looking at the group course and you start looking at the individual coaching. And you come to the moment where, well, we have one coming up in January, a group course in January. It's a very powerful experience where we have 5 group meetings over a period of 10 weeks. You have a virtual classroom where we're teaching you from there. It's a powerful experience, and it's pretty inexpensive. Okay, that's the whole key. I kept saying, Randy, we really love your work. Can you make one that we can afford? And you know, it's under $1,200. It's and it's payable. You know, it's broken down into increments, 5 payments that equal right at $1,200. The other is that people who are very serious, they know that they're there, they're missing the psychology, and they're saying, really, the truth is I would rather have a personal relationship, and they go the Ignite course with me. And the major difference is that the Ignite course is enormously comprehensive. It is also 10 consults with me over a period of 3 or 4 months. So it gets very in-depth, it gets really inside your head, and there's enough time to work out the real gremlins blocking you from performance. Powerful stuff. And at the same time, where depending on if you've heard of me, if you've just whatever, the first place to do is start with a free ebook, explore the website, get to know how I go about this process, and then consider getting the book. So anyway, I want to thank everybody. I particularly want to thank Reed, because this has really been interesting. Unfortunately, we don't seem to have had any little mishaps that happened to the last guy. But in the last few minutes, if you have questions, I'd love to be able to entertain them, and I can give you the explanation that I have of them. Here's a comment, and this is from Scott. It takes a trader about 3 or 4 years to figure out this is where they need to start first. Yeah, that's true, and I really wish that people got that, but they don't, and they really need to bang their head up against reality a good bit. And what happens is the real key is we're hoping like heck that the person doesn't deplete their capital before then, which happens a lot. But yeah, it takes 3 or 4 years. To be honest with you, it's rare when I'm working with a person with less than 5, 6 years of experience. They have to really prove they need it. Can we use coherent breathing? I'm not sure what coherent breathing is, but diaphragmatic or bellows breathing, the term I use is bellows breathing. And my gosh, I sure hope you are. Okay, if you're using coherent breathing from HeartMath, the M-Wave, I use M-Wave. It's not exactly what I like, but what you discover is diaphragmatic breathing. You need to learn it, friends. The first 3 weeks of my work in the personal course is literally you are learning to breathe, you're learning to relax in the heat of trading. You know, learning how to breathe and relax in a little yoga studio is absolutely useless. You have to have the skill learned in the environment you're going to be using it in. But yeah, absolutely. Given your shot stress example, do you believe that women have an edge over men in trading? Absolutely, they can. There's been a lot of evidence toward that. Is women do not have the problem that men do with testosterone. There's been a number of, in professional trading groups, big bank trading rooms, is that they were able to go in and measure testosterone and cortisol levels in their traders. And the thing is that most of the male traders would have exorbitant high levels of testosterone, which we would call euphoria or exuberant, irrational exuberance, and would make horrendous mistakes. That's how the whale gave up $2 billion and J.P. Morgan gave up $6 billion a while back. Women don't have that, and women, if they get past some of the, stuff that women have to get through, they don't have to deal with, testosterone and trying to prove yourself and being a man the way, and they can become phenomenally good traders. Not saying that men can't, but men have to really get past that, look at me routine. Hypnosis. Hypnosis is a lot like anything else, is that if you take a look at my work, I use a lot of guided meditations. I use a lot of hypnosis. Hypnosis is very good at building a surface circuit, okay? It is not it's not nearly as deeply as engrooved like some of the default programming. The default programming circuits are like the Grand Canyon. And hypnosis is like, you know, when you see it rain and you see the water coming downhill, how it cuts into the sand. That's hypnosis. I use hypnosis in my work, but I'm not expecting it to do that. I am actually using hypnosis to knock out your current state of mind to get at much more core material. But hypnosis by itself is good in the short term only. Okay. I have an M wave. Is it useful for traders? I should dust it off. It's very useful. However, you've asked a question that I'm doing research on right now, and I'm working with a number of traders getting this, is if you follow the coherence levels that they're trying to get you to live in, you will be too darn relaxed to trade. You won't have the focus, you won't have the alertness of doing that. And what I have found is that the coherence levels that you're seeking are actually higher than the ones they want you to have. You're looking for a coherence level that produces alert mind, focused mind, but the body is not revved up. Okay? And the problem is that it is not built. It's not built for M1. It is not built for trading. That's why right now I'm having engineers. We are building a piece that is expressly built for traders, where you will be able to see where you are in a trade on the chart, and you will be able to see your coherence, basically how sane you are at any particular moment in time, right there in real time. And that's a very interesting thing to be building. Okay, if a trader has identified a problem as being lack of patience causing sabotage in many, many trades, how can you fix this in a short period of time? You can start wishing and praying, okay? There is no quick fix. I want you to understand that. What happens in the initial phases of my own training when I see impulse traders like what you're talking about, what we do is we build stress inoculation modules, you know, and they're already built, and we teach them to build a circuit right beside the problem-causing circuit. And what happens is they fire on the same thing, and it collapses it. You know, what happens is you disrupt the impulse. Okay. However, that's a short-term solution. Beneath the impulse, almost always, is a deep desire to matter and to prove yourself. And that is the self-limiting belief that you're trying to prove yourself by performance that you have to get at. The short-term getting at the actual biomechanical structure of impulsivity is one thing. It's got to be done, because otherwise, you know, what happens, you're doing way too much overtrading and revenge trading. But at the same time, don't kid yourself to believe that that's a quick fix and everything disappears. You still have to get at the self-limiting belief that you are projecting into the markets, and the markets are just absolutely ambushing the heck out of you. You have to do that.
This will have to be the last question.
Okay, this is going to have to be the last question, okay? So, our chemistry and physiology dictates the quality of our thinking. Like the fish in water, we are unaware of this. Of course you aren't. That's the whole, you know, I'm going to tell you something. In mindfulness, you know, I teach mindfulness, and I teach it as a way of, it's called awakening the observer. And you start awakening yourself, and you realize that, oh my God, this has been going on all the time, and this stuff called thinking is not nearly as sexy as I used to think it was. Is that thinking in itself is a biological behavior that neurons are doing. And through the process of symbolic representation, it shows up in my mind as thoughts and images. Oh, it's and not saying that thinking can't be more than that, but ultimately neuroscience has been a blessing for traders if they're willing to look at it and begin to understand, you know, the way we produce consciousness, the way we produce awareness, the way we produce perception, the perceptual map we are constantly creating based on beliefs that we're projecting. I will say it this way, is in neuroscience what we say is this: you have never experienced the reality of the markets. Never. What you have experienced is your brain organizing information from sensorial modalities into a virtual simulation of the markets. What you are living, the markets are not out there. The markets are inside your head. And what you're doing is in this virtual representation, you are having your trading account telling you how effective your current virtual representation is of the markets. And if you get that, you're going, oh my God, you mean I'm creating, and I have plenty of stories, but we're out of time for that. But the point is you do not see the markets. You see through your beliefs. Okay? And when you grasp that, you realize, oh my God, I need to really take a look at the belief structure I have to create a virtual simulation of the market that produces money in my account. That's it. Well, friends, Reed, thank you.